People probably aren't going to like the framing of this, but it's really the best way to think of this. Vivek Ramaswamy essentially pulled a white conservative about talking about white Americans. So what do I mean by that? He goes up there along with Elon Musk, and he tries to explain the necessity of H-1B1 visas. Elon Musk is only really interested with having indentured servants. That's why he's a big proponent of the H-1B1 visa. He uses this metaphor of building a sports team, which I guess you could say there's some merit to that. But really his main concern is just having a group of a population of workers that he can exploit. Not to get too much on that, but just think of it this way. If you look at a particular position, there's going to be a range of salaries for a location. So you could say, well, the range of salaries for a particular job, an IT job, let's say it ranges from 45 to 65,000. And what he can do is he can bring in workers, and an American worker may demand that $60,000 salary, but the Indian worker will want, or the Indian worker who, or I just say Indian, but we're really talking about Indians in this context as a group they're focused on with IT, will be willing to take the lower end of that range just for the chance of staying in the country. It's really kind of a similar thing that goes on in the Middle East when they bring in workers from the Philippines and those parts of Asia, where you have these countries, these Gulf states, where basically the entire country lives off of oil revenue, and they just bring in people to do everything. That's the world that Elon Musk wants, because he can maximize profit. It's kind of obvious. It's very, very obvious. Vivek Ramaswamy, on the other hand, and I hope I'm not messing his name up too much, I don't think that's the only thing that's motivating him in his statement. So basically, he just kind of went off on a tear talking about the deficiencies in, quote, American culture, how Americans will take mediocrity. He's not just talking about Americans. We, Black Americans, we're not even part of the conversation. We make up less than 5% of IT. He's talking about white Americans. Read between the lines. Sometime back, he was in this interview. Now, it wasn't an interview. I guess it was a talk. I guess it was a talk show or something, an online talk show. I don't know what the context was, but he's talking to Ann Coulter, and Ann Coulter says to him, all kind of says, yeah, I agree with some things and blah blah blah, but I would never vote for you because you're Indian. And I remember saying that, and here's the thing, and I don't know. Every person of color has dealt with that in some way, no matter what you do. And now for him, it's not only him just being a person of color, but it's also him being his parents being immigrants, him being the perpetual foreigner. That's the thing. Like people from Southeast Asia, South Central Asia, they're the perpetual foreigners. I don't believe that, but you can be here for generations. You can be a Japanese American who, your great-great-grandparents have moved here, and people will still be, well, where are you from? And you're like, I'm from San Francisco. Where are your parents from? They're from Seattle. It doesn't matter. You're the perpetual foreigner, and that's the thing he's experienced. And the thing with that is that there will always be the Ann Coulters, the people who, no matter what you accomplish, they look down at you. No matter what you do, they'll think that their skin color makes them better than you. And he hears this, and he can't really just kind of say, listen, you skinny cave bitch, who do you think you're talking to? He can't say that, right? That's what I would have probably said, but that's why she ain't talking to me. So he has to sit there and deal with that. So instead, he goes on this tear about American culture. But what he's really saying is that you people's culture is deficient. You're mediocre. There's the expression, Lord, give me the confidence of a mediocre white man. That's what he's talking about. And man, he was digging deep. He was digging from all of those experiences of growing up, of watching TV. He's making references to Saved by the Bell and Family Matters. I mean, he was going back to when he was in middle school, and little Becky didn't want to dance with him at the middle school dance because he's just a little too brown. That ship was going deep with him, and the whole time he's sitting there, and he's probably sitting there thinking like, I am so much smarter. I am going to do so much better than these people. Why doesn't she like me? Why don't they accept me? And despite him being successful with his education and his pump and dump scheme and making millions from it, he still has to be humiliated by this woman, this skinny ass looking witch, who still thinks that she's better than him. So that was coming from a deep place with him. So why do I say he was pulling a white conservative? Because here's the thing. Like I said, if you're Black American, no matter what you do, you're going to come across white Americans who think they're just inherently better than you. Doesn't matter what level of education you get. It doesn't matter what you've accomplished. They're just going to think that they're better than you. And even if you do state your accomplishments, they'll say, well, you didn't really deserve it. It was DEI. I mean, think about it. That was the thing with Kamala Harris. She didn't come from wealth. She worked her way up. But what was she accused of? Sleeping her way up, right? Because she's an attractive woman, and she's a woman of color. She couldn't have done that on her own. Meanwhile, not even a mediocre, but a subpar white man gets all the credit in the world with Donald Trump. So then you'll be simultaneously told that you are a product of DEI, but then on the flip side, you'll be told that there's something wrong with your culture. That's the thing. That's what I mean. Like, Black Americans, like, well, you have a culture of violence, a hip hop culture, and whatever, right? I'll even get that. Here's the funny thing with that. PhD in mathematics, officer in the military, served overseas in a time of war, literally an Eagle Scout. It doesn't matter, because there will always be people who think they're just inherently better than me because their skin just seems to be a little lighter shade. So yeah, and even with this, there's going to be a fair chance that people are going to say, well, quit making yourself to be. And I've heard this before. You're always saying that you're the victim. You're the victim. Well, two things with that. No, I'm not saying I'm a victim. I'm just making observation. It's actually quite the opposite. I've taken advantage of the opportunities that have been given to me, and I've said, well, I know that there's going to be people who look down at me, but I'm going to do whatever anyway. But if there is any group of people who are really kind of crying foul, it's all of these people who are screaming DEI, DEI, and these people are taking our jobs and want protection from people who will work harder than you. You want protection from them getting the job that you're not willing to work at. That's victimhood. Also, side note, the whole thing with DEI, just apropos to nothing, the group that has actually benefited the most from diversity and inclusion programs have actually been white women. It's true. It's been white women more so than any other group.